all of the South African narrative stuff I've worked on had one unit, maybe two. But the second unit would really just go out to shoot some establishing shots, maybe a title sequence and so on. On international stuff, you have 2, 3, maybe even 4, 5 units shooting different scenes. You'll have a unit shooting action scenes. You'll have a unit shooting dialogue scenes with extras. You'll have another unit on the same day shooting stuff with the lead actors.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Department Spotlight, the show where we talk to our friends and colleagues about things that are happening in the South African film industry. So today, obviously because of the pandemic thing, we can't be together.
So we're joined by 3 cinematographers, good friends of ours who shot 5 of the 6 short films, all of them except for Eve, who shot Public Engagement, but we'll try and figure out to do something with him at another time as he was not available for this. But yeah. Enjoy.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Hi, I'm Louise. I'm a trained cinematographer. My main work that constantly keeps me occupied is shooting short films and being a first camera assistant.
Hi, my name is Nadis van Niekerk, and I work as a camera technician, mostly as a first AC. I also do second AC.
Okay, my name is Tsapang. I've been working for Via TV as a B camera operator, and I've been working on short films as well. I'm currently an intern at MultiChoice.
Awesome. Well, welcome guys, and welcome to this very strange edition of Department Spotlight, which is the show where we speak to our friends and colleagues in the film industry just about their experiences in general. What would you guys say? What are the different departments that fall under cinematography?
So many. I think the biggest one for me is problem solving, is that when you have an issue and you're in camera department, somehow you end up solving everybody's problems. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So you said your current field. So when you were talking about a first AC, what does that mean, Nadis?
Well, more or less, just keeping stuff in focus, but it's building cameras, camera maintenance, it's running the entire camera crew. So we'll start off with a gear check, make sure everything is in order, do troubleshoots, make sure all your gear and equipment is working properly. And then on set, maintenance and troubleshoots on set, and then making sure everything is in focus. A lot of people call us focus technicians as well. But yeah, more or less, you're running the entire camera crew, so the director of photography doesn't have to bother with any snags or anything like that.
Cool. So, Louise, what is the job of a director of photography specifically?
Director of photography really oversees the director's vision, or specifically what the producers have stipulated that they visually want to explore for their project. And that can be any different type of genres or technical, out of the hat kind of tricks that they want to do. If they want to do something out of the box or really plain and simple. So it's really around visual. And then you also have an aspect of really dealing with your actors one-on-one, which I find very important, because there is a relationship that happens with the actor and the camera that I think goes a little bit overlooked sometimes. Everybody expects it to be just a relationship between the director, the actors, and then via director again to the director of photography. But there is a sort of relationship that needs to be built between the director of photography and the talent.
That's very interesting. Tapong, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree. Our job as cinematographers is to just make sure you interpret very well the whole script as the director asks to you. If you want said, this needs to be whatever that the director vision, then, you have to tell it the way the whole crew agreed and stuff, Yeah.
let's walk through like you guys getting on set, right? So how do you sort of manage it from when you get onto set or even in pre-prod, but like once you get like contracted to do a job, what is the process? What happens?
So first things first, this will have a gear check. You'll show up and you would test everything camera-wise, everything from the actual camera, lenses, make sure the lenses are working, make sure the lenses are collimated. You'll measure distances, make sure the distances correlate with each other. You'll test cards, you'll test your codecs, you'll test literally everything and make sure that your camera as is will work on the day of shooting. You'll shoot some test footage, you'll send test footage to your DIT, and then when you get on set, you'll build camera. Generally we won't strike camera completely. We'll put the camera about half built, we'll de-lens it and so on at the end of the day. But you'll keep the camera mostly built. Every day when you get to set, you'll fix up your camera as you did, and you'll go and shoot. That being said, the DIT is generally in charge of cards. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the cards will sleep with the camera, but that happens very rarely. Obviously, you'll run into issues on almost every set, especially if you do long form. So that's when you'll do troubleshooting and so on, just to make sure that you don't run into as many issues. There's always something though, and that's when you'll have a channel of communication with your gear house for them to come and exchange gear and so on. But if you do your gear check properly and if you do it diligently, then you shouldn't run into too many issues.
And then after that, Tapang, what do you do like after gear check?
For me, mostly I haven't had to shoot. I have a first AC. I'm mostly working on run and gun situations. Like the job needs to be done very quickly and stuff, because I do mostly documentaries as well. So I don't have that time to test lenses. I have to use what I'm given at the time. So mostly it's just run and gun situations, but I make sure I arrive on time on set. I set up the camera. I do some tests in terms of like, do I need ND filter for this? Do I need this? Do I need light? Mostly I just use like natural lights. Like there's a show that I've been working on, like it's on VIA 147, TV channel. So that like I haven't used most of the light when I do like my B unit shoots as well. Like it's just natural light, and whenever the light is out, I have to stop shooting. So that's how I've been rolling mostly. The film that I worked on where I have like a first AC, like it was a Vets honors film, and it actually won a SAFTA yesterday. So
oh wow!
Yeah,
wow! Congratulations!
I actually heard about that. That's pretty cool.
Student,
small world. Nice.
SAFTA, best student film. So that's the film that I also thought about, and the whole film we shot with 18 to 55 Fuji film, Fuji lens. Fuji.
Okay.
So we just used the zoom lens for the whole film. So like
I see. Very interesting. And Louise, what maybe you can talk a bit about like lighting on when you get on set. How does that work for you?
Well, one thing that I will also say is that I noticed between the two cinematographers that have spoken that there is an element of problem solving. There's just different routes of going about it, like what I spoke about earlier. And it's all about your approach and your project. Like each situation is different. So when it comes to lighting, say if you do have a good relationship with a gear house and you are renting from a gear house and the lights that they've given you have issues or etc., you're able to speak to them and to sort it out. If you don't have that kind of relationship where you're able to exchange equipment, then you've got to just figure out what to do with what you have available to you. And so depending on what that scenario looks like and what that environment looks like will highly impact what you're able to achieve in the end of the day. But like particularly natural light is your best friend. There's so much that you can do with natural light. And honestly, with whatever you can find and whatever you can work with, you can really use it to like the best. Even if you just bounce some light through a window off a white sheet to give your character a bit of a fill, it makes a huge difference in the end of the day. Like, it's all about how you work with what you've got available to you.
So what you're saying is sort of like you work with what you have on the day to light it.
Well, yes, I would say so. There is planning that goes into what you want specifically for your project. But of course, there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be something that you didn't expect. And it's just rolling with the punches and coming up with the best. You always just got to deliver your absolute best that you can do. Yeah. And sometimes it isn't what you wanted, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know what I mean? It sounds a bit strange, but like
I do.
I think, I'm sure you know what I mean. Like,
yeah. It sounds like you, both you and Tsapang, are sort of coming from like kind of a low budget type environment.
Yeah.
Oh, more run and gun guerrilla style shooting. I'm curious, Nardis, you've worked on a lot of more like sort of big budget type shows, right? Am I correct?
Well, I wouldn't say big budget, but some sort of budget, yes.
Okay. And would you say the approach on those shoots are like different from what Louise and Tsapang are saying?
No, it's more or less the same, eh?
Yeah.
There's always something. There's always something, mate. I think the big difference is you have more of a support system. You sometimes have a larger crew. You sometimes, even you as an assistant would have an assistant, you'll have runners and so on. So everything doesn't necessarily fall on your head. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I said earlier, you would oftentimes run into some issues, and you would be able to call a gear house or whoever, and they can send their technicians to come and help you out, or to replace you, so on. Oftentimes on the lower budget stuff, you'll run into issues, or you'll have you'll have broken batteries or something, and you'll have to work around a way to shoot an entire day with only 2 or 3 batteries, for instance.
Yeah, true.
Whereas oftentimes on a bit of the larger shoots, you'll have spares, and you'll have a contingency plan. But no, it's more or less the same thing. There will always be issues, and it will always depend on somebody to fix those issues.
Yeah, I think the only instance where you're actually going to get something that's fully executable to your planning is if you're lucky enough to shoot in like a massive studio, and that's when you're getting huge budgets. That's like Warner Brothers kind of budget. So I think that's the only environment with enough resources that's controllable enough to absolutely execute your idea to the T.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's really cool that the thinking around the problem solving stays the same depending on, like, it doesn't even matter about the budget. The thinking still stays the same. It's just when you get more budget, you get more like safety net, as Nardis was saying. But the approach seems, from what you're saying, is still the same. Like, I often see, sort of from looking at like behind the scenes of various projects, is that they're still trying to find the sort of most low cost way to solve the problem. Because when you think about budget, you just think that, oh, you've got like all these more resources, but it's like you do in a sense, but it's this thing of, as the budgets get bigger, the amount of people get bigger, so everyone has to still get paid. So it's still, the money's still like distributed in the same sort of way as a smaller budget thing. So you still have to end up with these sort of very like creative solutions to stretch it as far as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, also it's time saving. Time is your biggest cost on a shoot, regardless of your budget.
I think at the end of the day, whether you're, a student working on a no budget, or if you're working in Hollywood on a Warner Brothers shoot, at the end of the day, you're doing the exact same job. You have different equipment. You might have better equipment, newer equipment, but it's still, at the end of the day, essentially it's the same thing.
Amazing.
I agree. Yeah,
that's actually really encouraging to hear as well, because like when when you're starting out, you're like, oh, one day when I get to that level, I won't have these problems anymore. But the truth is actually like, no, you'll still have the issues. They'll just be like on a different scale, and you'll use the foundation that you built in the low budget time to fix those issues.
Yeah, I'd say it's absolutely valuable, really. But it's also your mindset. If you have a really good work ethic and you put value to what you've learned, then it pays off. If you have a bad attitude about it and you just think that it's all a waste of time, then you're not actually going to put value to that, and you won't be able to kind of apply the experiences that you've had.
So we're talking about sort of the differences of budget sizes, but sort of segueing into different types of sets. I have a question here. What's the difference between a commercial set and a narrative film set?
For me, because I work on both, I think with narrative, you oftentimes have a lower budget per episode, if that makes sense, but you have a little bit more time. Commercial sets are generally more comfortable, but you're rushing. You have to oftentimes shoot a 3 minutes or so in 12 hours. The crews are oftentimes the same size. It depends on the general size of your commercial. But commercials, I find, anyways, are generally more comfortable, a little bit more cushy than narrative kind of drama series, TV dramas, and so on. But I think most people prefer to do commercials if you can get the amount of work. If you can work often within a month, most people would prefer to work on commercials as opposed to drama series or even features, because you first and foremost, you get paid more. You get paid on a daily basis instead of weekly or monthly, and most things are better. It's more comfortable on commercials.
That's very interesting.
The price difference in terms of your income, is that specific to here, or is it just that's the way the commercials industry is versus narrative internationally?
So commercials generally pay a daily rate, whereas narratives generally pay weekly or monthly rates. So your weekly rate, you might be pulling more money per week or per month, but if you can get the same quantity of work getting paid daily rates, then you want to get paid in daily rates, because you would make more per day than you would per week. Let's say I have a week where I can make 6 commercials. I'll make far more money than a week on a TV drama.
Interesting.
Oh,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, even for like from my side on the editing jobs that I do, the shorter jobs tend to pay more than the longer projects, which I guess is for the same reason. Yeah.
Even on smaller shoots, for instance, I do a lot of music videos, and I prefer to do music videos because I get paid in a daily rate, and they always make my daily rate. Although on long forms, you do have more security because your rent will get paid at the end of the day, at the end of the month. You'll be able to buy groceries and so on. All your bills will get paid. But if you can get the same quantity, per daily jobs, then you would rather do that.
I'm curious, have you had sort of weeks or months when you got enough or the same amount of daily rate jobs as the long form stuff? Has that happened?
I have. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened. That's best case scenario.
Awesome.
But mostly, as a general rule of thumb, if I can get onto a long form, I'll get onto a long form.
Okay. So what is it then about the long form that attracts you over sort of like, obviously money is not the biggest decider, but what is it about long form that attracts you to it?
It's fun, man. I like it. I feel like that is me and my happy place. It's also, I don't want to say it's less stressful because the stress factor is still there, but you you work with the same people every day. You get used to your crew. You get used to your sets. So after a couple of weeks, everything is good. There's generally also less egos because people don't feel like they have something to prove. In the commercial world, every day is with a new crew, every day is with new people. Sometimes you'll run into people who have something to prove. Sometimes it can be great. But I generally prefer to work on a long form. You get along with your DOP, you get along with your assistants, everything is nice, man.
I see.
Whereas with commercials, oftentimes it can get extremely stressful.
Tsapang, you mentioned that you're working sort of full-time for a company and interning with MultiChoice. Are you also on a lot of sets like Nardis is when he does his the narrative work?
They usually call me for like assisting and like it's the company's Cooler Box Brothers, by the way. Yeah, Maruno, he actually went to TTF there as well. I've noticed like in mostly the documentary that we shoot, mostly like it's just everything is like it's just quick. I don't know, like
okay, I see.
I haven't really went into like the budget and how things are done and stuff, but I just go there and get my daily rate because they get me like they hire me as a freelancer. I'm not like permanent with them. Yeah.
So all your days are day rates?
Need me, mostly. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. And how when you say it's not as long, how many days would you say it is per shoot?
Like mostly we can do like 12 episodes in a month, actually. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Like the farm show that we did. Yeah. Like we shot each episode for 2 days. So yeah, sure. And we are traveling as well. So yeah, like there's no time to just say, okay, we need to plan this. We need more time to film this. Like even the other one, the For Me, it's on V as well. Yeah, like we didn't have enough time to get more cutaways because I was getting the cutaways. The A unit was getting the interviews. So I'll say, okay, I need shot of this street, I need a shot of that, or shot of that. Like I don't have time for that. I'm given like a day to make sure
just get
I have
everything.
Enough cutaways. Yeah.
But I mean, there must be something to say for that, like the ability to just think on your feet and just like
true
quickly.
Yeah, because like documentaries, they train you to make decisions like quickly, like because you don't know. We work on like actually mostly for the weather as well. You don't know, you might plan to have those beautiful sunset shots and it can be cloudy the whole day, so it's more like you have
adapt.
To use whatever you can, like if they adapt to the situation as well. So I think
do you think that's when you go onto sort of a longer form production, do you feel that where you were shooting on those other documentaries sort of helps you in a way to sort of train you to make decisions quicker, or sort of what's the benefit of shooting a production like really quickly like you have to do?
What I've noticed mostly when I'm on like when I shoot short films, we run out of time mostly. So doing the documentaries and like those quick shoots, I've learned that mostly you need to know how to light very quickly. Like you don't have to think about diagrams. Like you have to look at the set and say, okay, here's my natural light. It's coming from this side, and you need to add more lights from there and stuff. Like you need to think like very quickly, because even your team will respect you for that as well. Like if you know what you're doing as well on set, like they will see that, okay, we need to move. Yeah.
Awesome. Louise, do you have anything from your experience? Sort of like you said you shoot a lot of short films. What is sort of the longest shoot window that you've had?
Well, so you kind of had like a 2-part question. My experience pretty much around the topic of commercial shoots and the cost difference and etc. It's actually such a personal question, really. If you're trying to see or compare your rates to other cinematographers, they're really protective about what they're actually asking on for a daily rate or a personal rate or however they choose to charge their time. And it's very difficult once you're starting out to figure out how to price yourself that isn't too low. Like, you don't want to go bankrupt, but isn't too high, because then people don't want to pay that price. So it's quite difficult when you first start out. I remember a friend of mine who was also just a very fresh graduate worked with me on a production, and as a daily rate, she put down something really ridiculous, like 500 Rand. And as for an individual who's got an education and has practical skills and has a semblance of knowledge, like, that's way too low. Yeah. But of course, you don't know that when you're just starting out. And I still find it quite difficult to actually figure out where to place myself. But interestingly enough, the Film Commission for freelancers, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, but they released a statement saying that a daily rate should be 3,600 Rand. And I don't actually know anybody who's willing to hire me for 3,600 Rand a day. Like,
same.
Our industry is just not willing to pay that. So I think that the freelancers' daily rate or weekly rate or monthly rate, however they want to charge their time, will depend on the economic status of that industry. Like, it's just, it goes hand in hand. It just, like, that's how it is.
When Louise was speaking about sort of rates and all of that kind of consideration, and like students not knowing how much to price themselves when they go out into the industry, it kind of reminds me of like in high school when you're doing LO and you're like, and then you get out into the real life and you're like, why didn't LO teach me like how to do my taxes? And it's like, I feel like in film school, they don't teach you what the industry is really like.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Some lecturers do, and some of it's covered, but I don't feel like enough focus was put onto it. Like, I didn't learn anything about being a freelancer, except on the odd occasion when it would just come up, like in conversation, or someone would actually have to bring it up. But it just reminds me of high school and LO and how we weren't like really prepared. And it's like, oh, you have to do taxes now, and it's like, I don't know how to do this. Like, you know what I mean?
What do you mean? Like, you knew it was going to be there, but actually, in the end of the day, you don't know how to do that thing.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think all of us who studied cinematography anyway studied under Harmon Cusack. And I do recall him mentioning how much, freelancer would make more or less. But in terms of assisting and in terms of how we're working, we weren't really prepared all that much. I remember my first job outside of film school was it was such an eye-opener because I was working on a 2-camera crew. I was second camera assistant, and I learned more in those couple of months from those people than I ever did at film school. So I would say if you really want to learn how to work in the industry, get your ass on a job and learn from the people who are actually working in the industry. Film school will only prepare you that much.
Yeah, I think film school is geared towards the practical side of it. And I think, I've literally just said problem solving this entire video so far, but honestly, like, that comes from Harmon. He really drilled that into us and really gave us a lot of tools about how to problem solve things and to think for yourself and to be able to resolve these issues that you're constantly going to have. And it's so much better to make those kind of mistakes and that learning curve in university or in a sort of educational environment, which is kind of safer, than on an expensive film set. But nothing will repay you for the industry like the industry will. It's its own educational platform.
I suppose that is one of the pros of going to the film school, is exactly what you're saying. You get that kind of buffer between the industry and
not
and
knowing
yourself,
anything.
and
Yeah.
not knowing anything, and so you don't get slammed by that wall. But what do you think, each of you, would you say to be a cinematographer in South Africa? You kind of touched on it already. Is like film school necessary?
I don't think it's necessary. I do think it's beneficial. I do think you can get to a position where you can have more responsibility and do more on a set and in the industry if you've gone to film school and you've gotten those qualifications. Do you have to do it? No. Would I suggest that you do it? Yes, probably.
I wanted to ask, okay, so let's do it two-part. Like, how do you get on your first set? That's the question. But like, if you didn't go to film school, how would you approach it? And how did you eventually get on your first like paying job set?
For me, I actually started like doing stuff for free. Actually, I approached people and I asked, "Can I shoot this for you like for free?" Because I started back then with the weddings and stuff. Like my first wedding, I asked like people like, "Okay, can I just cover the ceremony? Can I cover this? Then I will show you the footage and maybe you'll pay me if you want to." Yeah. So I think it's more out of asking as well. Like you have to approach people and network with people, attending those what is it, the media thingy? They usually have it at Ticket Pro. Yeah, the expos. Like make sure you attend the expos, network with people, because even the Moya film that we shot, the short film that won the SAFTA, the reason why I got the job was like I was working on a commercial as a colorist actually. Yeah, just a quick commercial for YouTube channel actually. So the guys sold me like the way I was working as well, like on set, because I was also assisting the cinematographer with like rigging lights and moving stuff, and yeah. So he was like, "Okay, I'm working on a honors film. Would you mind to be part of like the film as a director of photography?" And I was like, "Okay, cool, I will do it." And he didn't say, "I will pay you, I will do this." I was like, "Okay, this is an opportunity. Let me just do." Because what am I doing? Like there was nothing that I was doing. So I was like, "Okay, I will do the job." So yeah. So it's more like you
grab
need
the opportunity or make the opportunity for yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
Interesting. Nardis, would you agree?
Yes, no, absolutely. My first job as well, when I just graduated, I struggled a bit to get onto sets, and I actually worked as a sparky in lights for the first couple of months, literally just moving stands and plugging in lights. And the first couple of months was really a struggle for me. And then a friend of mine was working on a television show, and they needed somebody to stand in as a camera operator for a day. I messaged them and I said, "I'm available, I can do it." I think I botched the job, but the same production company called me back.
Oh, amazing.
And
wow,
that's when you know you're good.
That's when I actually ended up on a TV drama for quite a few months on B-Cam, pulling focus. And from there on, every single job I've ever did, I can trace back to that job.
Oh, wow.
And, it's just making yourself available. And I don't think I've ever really said no to any jobs. I think there are one or two jobs that I've declined to do. And that's really just because the production company had such a bad reputation that I didn't, I wouldn't do it.
You got to be careful of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as a general rule of thumb, I'll take any job. I'll do any job. I'm not fussy. And like I said, everything I can trace back to that first job. And your career will just continue. Every month you'll get a little bit more. You'll meet more people. You'll get a reputation, and that's how I built my career up.
Cool. Louise, do you have anything to add?
No.
All right, cool, no problem.
No, I think that encapsulates it pretty well. Like you just keep going. There are the things that you have to say no to, and you have to. I don't know. It's difficult, and I find it quite stressful. Like knowing when to say no, because I don't know. Like you're closing a possibility that could lead to something much better, even though if that one thing that you've got to do isn't the greatest. So it is a kind of give and take part, but I think the biggest thing that you got to look out for is if the people that want you on the project does not have a good reputation, or they're not registered, or I don't know, you can just tell if they're not legitimate. You shouldn't be working with those people, and those are the people that you should say no to. So if you're unsure, then those are the things that you look for.
Cool.
There will be red flags.
Yeah.
Also, the industry is very small. Everybody talks to each other. Everybody knows each other. So it's very easy to get a bad reputation. You know, but also some people can have a bad reputation at some, by some people, and a good reputation from other people. But it's at the end of the day, it's completely up to you whether or not you want to accept the job, whether or not you want to do the job. For me, if I know that people don't pay or people overwork you, then I would rather not. I would rather not get onto that set, because at the end of the day, my health is more important than whatever production you're doing.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that is a very common thing that also does happen. Like, working over hours is just a reality of the film industry. It's going to happen that at some point, but you do get productions, and I can think of a few that like absolutely, oh, this happened to me. Okay, story time. This happened to me on a commercial that I shot. I was working with a vehicle manufacturer, and we were shooting on a golf field with 3 different vehicles, and we shot them all within one day, 30 seconds. Well, 30 seconds is the end product for each vehicle. And like, I didn't have any water or any food all day. Like, there was no, like there was no actual care for like the individuals who were working. We were all in the sun all day, and it was absolutely awful. Also, the crew was horrendous. Like, they treated me very, very badly. At the end of the day, like, we just spent an entire day together, all these people. And at the end of the day, they still got my name wrong after correcting people 50,000 times. And it was a horrendous experience. And like, it's just stuff like that where you get worked to the bone, and you still get treated really badly, and it costs you. I was very badly dehydrated. I had to go to the emergency room, if I remember vaguely correctly. My mom was very worried. Yeah, so that can very easily happen. Like, you think you're going into something great, and then it ends up not being great. Like, it's very touch and go in the end of the day.
Absolutely. What is a human right?
What are human rights? Yeah.
So last year, actually, I was working as a clapper loader on a commercial for a Zambian company, and we ended up doing 2-day shoot. The first day we shot 14 hours, which is fine. I mean, it happens. The second day we actually went for 6 hours overtime, so we ended up shooting almost 18 hours
Straight.
Straight, bro, straight. And, many reasons. We would shoot entire scenes, and then the client would come in and they're not happy, but we've already shot an entire scene, turned camera around, everything.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we shot 18 hours and they did not even say thank you. So that's my story. And I can deal with a lot of things, but not having water and not getting a thank you, don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, it's a respect thing as well. Like, respect my craft. I'm trying to make your craft look good.
Exactly.
That's all we want. Like, just mutual respect.
They did pay overtime though, so
okay.
Silver linings.
But still.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to like a couple more sort of fun type cinematography questions. So I want to ask, what is the most recent film that you saw that really made you think about your shooting style and how you would want to, adjust it, or things that you want to try?
I actually watched Seven last night, and I still regard it as one of the prettiest movies. I mean, it's ugly pretty.
Yeah,
but it's
very
shot
gritty.
so well, and it looks so amazing, man. And I don't know. I can't really think of any focus pulls or anything like that at the moment. but just the way it's lit and the way they'll play around with light in the narrative. Like for instance, there's that scene where Brad Pitt's character, Detective Mills, tells the story of where he shot the guy. Can't remember the cop who got shot's name. And when the scene starts, it's pretty low key, like pretty dark, almost chiaroscuro. And then you see the sun moving past them in the car. And by the end of the scene, it's almost like more of a high key, a little bit brighter kind of lighting setup. And I think that speaks volumes about the narrative. You know, him getting this story that's been bugging him for years off of his chest. I just think it's such an amazing film, and it's made so beautifully.
Very
yeah,
true.
7
Very
is
true.
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
For me, I actually recently watched a series. Now, I haven't looked into the behind the scenes of it too much. I'm not even sure who the director of photography is yet. I only really just saw this. It's
Yeah.
a series. It's an Apple original series called C, and Jason
Yeah.
Momoa is one of the main characters that's in it.
Yeah.
And basically within the story premise, all these characters are blind. And the way that they visually depict this is very interesting. Like typically you have a very standard way in which you place your characters inside a frame for eye line and their basically normal social dynamic flow.
Yeah.
But because everyone is blind, it's completely different. Characters don't necessarily look at each other. Characters are intruding into each other's personal space. And besides that, it's in a like utopian world which does not have electrical lighting. And so there's a lot of blues and reds and oranges from trying to mimic different lighting scenarios, and just thinking like there's a forest scene that is lit amazingly, and I just like it blows my mind when people shoot outdoors and it looks so good. It blows my mind. Honestly, because I think one of the worst things is to shoot under trees, because as soon as the sun comes out, oh boy, are you going to see a bunch of flecks of little light, and it's going to be annoying as hell. And then the sun's going to go away, and then all the little light goes away, and it just, nothing makes my blood boil than shooting under trees and outside, because the sun never behaves, ever. So, yeah, there's and this series just in general is just really amazing, very different. But I think that that's the most interesting thing that I've seen about this series is character dynamic and how they've managed to manipulate it in such a way that it makes you conscious of the fact that their social dynamics are very different. And it's actually executed through the way that the characters are shot. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. It's very different.
Interesting.
It's rad. Absolutely recommend.
Very interesting.
Watch
Okay,
it.
cool. Tupang, do you have a series, or a movie?
I think I still love Sicario, the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why
okay.
I don't know why I like Roger Deakins, but the way he lights, like it's so natural. Like you wouldn't tell that there was a light there. Like it's super natural, nice and soft. Like yo. So for me, like even the way he lenses as well, like the choice of lenses, like a simple close up, you can even do it with like 35 or 25. Like it still looks good as well. So yeah.
Definitely. I mean, Roger Deakins is a master. But then that does bring us to, who is your favorite DOP?
Probably
My favorite
Emmanuel
DP
Lubezki.
oh, okay.
Yeah, Emmanuel Lubezki is great.
Yeah.
Tupang, you were saying?
I think it's obvious for me.
Yeah, Roger Deakins.
I just said
it. True. And Louise?
Same.
Which one?
he also made
Lubezki or
amazing-
Deakins?
Both.
Yeah, it's just yes.
Just yes.
Yes.
Correct
Yeah.
answer. Yes.
Yeah.
Which one? Yes.
What is it about their style that attracts you to their work?
I think for me with Lubezki, anyways, is he has a way telling a narrative and character development that is natural but not natural at all, if that makes sense. He almost has this fantastical world in all of his films where it feels so natural, even though it's not. And he has a way, and he gets the story across in a way that just feels right.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. It is quite, I think it's unusual because it's quite different to what other cinematographers have done before, but yet the motion that he's using is somewhat a natural motion. So the audience is almost comfortable with it, but also uncomfortable with it because it's so unusual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those wide-angle
Yeah.
close-ups, man.
Yeah.
Those wide-angle close-ups on like an IMAX screen. I remember I watched The Revenant, I think, on an IMAX screen, and it was like transcendental, man.
It's magic. It's absolute magic.
What was the question again?
What is it about Roger Deakins' style that attracts you to him?
I think I've watched one of his interviews, and he was like, he doesn't have a style. He approached each film differently, actually. So, and I've noticed, but then you also notice if you watch his work as well, like the way he keeps his skin tones. They say, like, I don't know if he is because he likes Ari Alexa, but
Yeah,
it's
he
so
seems to be a
milky.
fan.
Like it's more milky. Like his footage, like it's amazing.
I want to sort of segue a little bit. Like Roger Deakins always, or as much as possible, operates himself, right? Obviously, we know recently as he gets older, he doesn't operate as much anymore. When you guys are the DOP on a specific set, right? Do you prefer to operate yourself, or do you get somebody to operate for you?
I've always operated myself, always.
Why is that?
I think just because of the vision that I have or that I want to execute, it's so much easier to do that hands-on. I suppose if you find somebody that completely understands the style that you want to achieve and that you're really comfortable working with, then it can work to work with someone in that regard. But as of yet, I haven't found someone that I'm totally comfortable giving my child to, so I'm gonna do it.
Okay,
I think it's just a comfort thing, frankly. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Nardis?
Yeah, no, I have to agree with Louise. I feel the same way. In South Africa, it really is the standard for most DOPs to operate themselves.
Okay.
I've been fortunate enough to be on a couple of international shoots where the DOP actually had operators for them, and I think it's more for them. It's the luxury of sitting and watching the screen and taking everything in. That being said, they also have operators that are regarded as some of the best in the country. So you have to get to a certain level, I would say, in order to do that and in order to pull it off. Otherwise, for me personally, I would operate myself always. Yeah.
Cool. Tabang?
For me, I agree, because in South Africa, like, I prefer a minimal crew. Like, I don't like so many people around me as well. So the less the better, actually. I can think properly as well. Like, and I can always frame the way I want to as well. Like, unlike telling someone, okay, you should have done this, you should have done that. Like, you know, I remember I was doing this other shot, like a dolly move. Then I was asking like my AD to just push slowly and stuff. Then I was like, it's not the pace that I want. Then I had to operate and push myself like, at the same time as well. So actually, I will send you one of the shots as well. Yeah.
I wanted to ask Nardis. You mentioned that you worked on some international sets. What is the difference that you found between South African sets and international sets?
Budget, really. I think budget is the largest difference. The crews are far larger, and you also have multiple units, where in South Africa, all of the South African narrative stuff I've worked on had 1 unit, maybe 2. But the second unit would really just go out to shoot some establishing shots, maybe a title sequence and so on. On international stuff, you have 2, 3, maybe even 4, 5 units shooting different scenes. You'll have a unit shooting action scenes. You'll have a unit shooting dialogue scenes with extras. You'll have another unit on the same day shooting stuff with the lead actors. So it's really far larger budget. Just everything is much, much bigger. Personally, like I said, I prefer working on smaller stuff because it's much more intimate. So working on stuff that's that large with that many people, I just find it chaotic personally. Somehow everything gets pulled together somehow. I remember on this particular production, there was one day where I think I was on the shoot for about 2 weeks, and we were shooting a specific action sequence with the lead actors. And I think we were 3 units all shooting the same thing. And I remember thinking like, wow, dude, I've been shooting this thing for about 2 weeks, and all of a sudden there's a whole other camera unit with people that I know, but I didn't even know they were shooting the same thing I was shooting. And, you know, the other DOP, the main DOP was there, and I didn't even know he was the main DOP. You know what I mean? So
that's crazy.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I think that's the standard that you see in like Hollywood and places like that. Personally, I prefer a much smaller, much more intimate crew. I'm sure those kind of sets happen, but I think on especially action movies, you don't really see that kind of stuff.
Do you think?
Sure.
Do you think something's lost in that? Do you think there's some sort of dilution?
I do think so. I think it's easy to lose the essence in something if you as a creative don't have control as an HOD over everything. Like I said, at some point 4 different units shooting the same show.
Damn.
So, you know, this guy lights it this way, that guy lights it that way. They're all DOPs, and we're all trying to bring together the same thing, but everybody has different thought processes. Of course, there would be pre-production and everything would be worked out ahead of time. But I do think, like you said, there is some sort of dilution. I prefer especially narrative stuff to be much more intimate and much more to the point from the heart.
I think I was reading an article, Deakins echoed the same thing. Like when he started working on like much larger projects like Blade Runner 2049, and the producers were trying to convince him to do multiple units, and he just refused because as you're saying, there's just like too many cooks, you know, spoils that old broth.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. I got one question here. What are some characteristics of your ideal director to work with?
Okay, I'll answer. Okay, characteristics that I think is very important for a director, particularly for myself, perhaps also in general, I think we can all agree, is somebody who is open to listening and interpretation of any critique or questions or suggestions. Not necessarily that somebody that just agrees with everything, but somebody who's at least just willing to listen and actually consider what you've said, not
Absolutely.
just pretending to listen and then throwing it out the window. Like some people just listen so that they can say that they did that and then carry on with their day. And that's kind of defeating the purpose. The point is just to listen to what the people have to say around you and then to react upon that.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah, I think that's my main ideal thing, is just somebody willing to actually consider what I have said to them.
For me, communication. Communication is key. When I studied, especially, I worked with some directors who just couldn't get a point across in a way that anybody could really interpret it and understand it. I'm sure in their own heads they had a very clear, concise idea of what they wanted, but oftentimes it would either get lost in translation, or the general idea wouldn't be carried across. And I think you, as a director, you have to direct, and if you can't communicate, then you can't direct.
Yeah.
Agreed, yeah.
For me, I think I prefer someone who's not too technical, because they usually like ask questions. Yeah, why is it so dark? Why is it so I prefer someone who can trust me, like who really trusts the crew members, and like who's okay, I will give you the freedom to do whatever you can. And as a director, they will also focus on directing. So I prefer someone who's not too technical as well.
Okay.
Yeah, all very good points, frankly.
Cool. Mark, do you have a final question?
Oh, I suppose we can end off with talking about the sort of current situation that we're in right now, which is why we're all not together. How has this pandemic affected your work, and what can you do, or have you been doing at home during this pandemic?
Well, there is no work.
Yeah.
Cool, we'll see you next time.
No, but in all honesty, everything, it's a dire situation. Everything around the world has been shut down, from here in South Africa to the United States to India to Nigeria, Australia, all over the world. People are out of work. People are really struggling to make ends meet. This year actually started amazing for me. Like I had such a lovely start of the year, and then all of a sudden, we're shutting down, and we're getting cases of coronavirus in South Africa. And there's a lot of my colleagues who weren't as lucky this year, and it's really bothersome because they don't have an income. They haven't had much of an income this year, and quite frankly, we don't know when we're going to get back to work, and when work is if work is ever going to come. Just before we locked down, I was on a TV drama, and we shot the first episode of the second season, and we had to shut down. We were one of the first shows to shut down in the country, and literally a couple of days after that, it was one after the other. I'm talking with a lot of my colleagues, a lot of other camera technicians, grips and lighting guys, and nobody knows what's going on.
Sure.
So I think right now I'm keeping busy with shooting stock and stuff like that, trying to figure out a hustle at the moment, but I'm hoping that we can get back to work as soon as possible.
Man, that's so hectic. Yeah, because I was thinking about it as soon as it happened. I was like, there's no way, except for like post-production, for film sets to exist in any way, because you're working so close to one another. There's no way to like socially distance yourself from
on a set,
the person that's like the same camera as you know what I mean? So,
and you touch so much stuff, like there's no way that you can touch something that somebody else hasn't already touched. It's just not gonna work.
They said they're talking about getting a third of the workforce back at work, but I mean, a third of the workforce is a skeleton crew, and especially in long form TV dramas, or even commercials, man, you're not going to be able to do much with a third of the workforce. I do think that it will resume eventually. When, I can't say. We're all digging into our savings, and quite frankly, we don't know when that savings eventually it'll dry up. So I'm worried, and there are a lot of people in the industry who are in very, very, very dire straits at the moment.
That's really hectic. But besides trying to get some stock footage to sell, what are other ways that cinematographers can sort of generate some type of income in these really hectic times?
You can maybe do some sort of teaching lessons or something. I don't know. You know, we've been
But that's
we've
a
been shooting.
long-term kind of goal. I don't know if you put out lessons like that. A, who are you trying to sell the lesson to, or B, are you trying to do it independently? If you're trying to do it on your own YouTube channel or something, then you also got to play the long game of getting subscribers, getting to a certain amount. Like, it's not something that's going to be helping you very soon. So that even in itself is like not really going to help you in the way that you need it.
No, absolutely, I agree. A lot of guys that I know also, they've been doing press stuff for the media. They've been going out and shooting for the news and so on. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of us. There are a lot of us that have to make ends meet, and somebody's going to draw the short straw at the end of the day. I think people have already drawn the short straw. Like I said, not everybody was lucky enough to get jobs earlier this year to get some sort of a savings.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I know, like I said, they've been working for decades, and all of a sudden they're in a situation where they don't know where rent's going to come from. So
Cool. Is there anything that we can say just to not end on a downer?
It's such a downer. I see that a lot of people are finding ways in coming together through technology, which is very interesting and quite inspirational. People are talking about subjects and opening up about things that they normally wouldn't talk about. And there is a sense of camaraderie globally around this pandemic, which is comforting more in an emotional way than what it can be in a physical or in a financial way. But people are doing what they can, and I think that in itself is a beautiful thing.
I'm optimistic. I really think we're going to get out of this for the better. It's just when. But I do think that the world will be, not only return to normal, but will return to the better.
All right, cool. Well, I think let's end it right there. So thank you.
Actually, that was good. I was like,
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Louise, Nadis, and Tupang. And also thank you to Mark. And we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Department Spotlight Pandemic Edition. Guys, and thanks so much for coming on board with the whole podcast and sending footage and all that stuff. And
Give your time.
and giving your time and
Appreciate it a lot.
everything. Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you,
right, guys. Cheers.
all right.
So great. That was the end of the conversation. We hope you all learned something. If you did, tell us about it down in the comments. We want to know what you have gained from this. And if there's a question about cinematography or any other part of the filmmaking process, leave it down below as well. I mean, we're at home, so we'll answer all your questions.
And remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Go check out all the films that we've done in the past, and also go check out all the other episodes of Department Spotlight that are on this channel and in this playlist up here, and also in the card at the end of this video and in the description, just everywhere. So until next time, stay inside and make your movie.